Sarah Muffet and I brought together intergenerational locals comprised of visual artists, Gumbaynggirr Indigenous artists, poets, musicians, filmmakers, scientists, Gumbaynggirr traditional knowledge holders, and stakeholder community groups for this project. The groups shared and explored human and natural histories, scientific relationships, community import, and their personal responses to the White Bluff location. So Sarah, would you do a project like this again?
No, I'm just going to paint in the studio. No.
Well,
no, look, it was you know, it snowballed, the snowball effect. But no, it was a fantastic project to come back to, you know, moving back to a regional area and being able to be part of and to bring together all these different sorts of people to, I think, the achievement of the book, the actual exhibition, and the journey was, despite all the, you know, the hair pulling and disasters, was bloody great.
Well, I mean, I'm still buzzing from it, but I have to say I decided to have a 2-year hiatus of just working in the studio and catching my breath.
Yeah.
And we still, within the local community, have reverberations and comments from people about the show, how amazing it was and the quality of the work and the interest. So, you know, it has really proven for the artists to be sustainable, and artists have expanded their practice, they've made new connections and new initiatives. And the scientists, on the odd occasion when I see the scientists, one of them in particular says, well, when are we going to do another one, Ray? One of the first problems that we had was accessing the right mob to give us the Gumbaynggirr Indigenous information.
Because of the location of White Bluff being on the edge of
a number of borders.
A number of borders. You know, yeah, that was actually quite difficult. During that same period, we were being assisted greatly through the Coffs Harbour Regional Museum with their staff, and their extensive recently digitised collection for post-colonial histories, and those.
Some of the artists accessed.
They did. I did.
Those archives as well.
Yeah.
So that was really an initial
great resource.
Helpful. We also were fortunate enough to access Coffs Harbour Council arts and cultural grants each year for the 4 years that the project ended up running, and that kept us afloat financially.
It did. We were able to, I think one of the aims was to be able to pay all the participants, so in various guises, whether it was, you know, some material fees, but to be part of the project. I think that was very, very important.
It enabled us to actually run the workshops that we had planned so that we could bring the team together and organically get the team to form collaborative teams and partnerships in the making of work with experimentation and risk-taking. And that proved to be invaluable. And we managed to have our first workshop at the National Marine Science Centre.
We did. It was a great session.
I think one of the important points was in our selection of the team members, because what was really useful was that we chose people that we were convinced were going to be open to experimentation, open to exploring new ideas and new ways of working, and also being prepared to share and be generous with one another. And that's how it came to be. the majority of our team were actually experienced professionals, and they provided the backbone and mentorship for some of the junior members of the team going forward.
I know, Ray. That was, in our very early discussions, keeping the project and these relationships as an organic development was one of the most important features, rather than forcing, a geologist or an ornithologist to work with a painter or. We wanted it to happen naturally.
We didn't feel that it was going to work, and we were proven correct.
Yeah,
that
it's risky, very risky.
Yes, but we held the line, and we triumphed as far as that was concerned. And we had our second workshop, which was a bit later in that same year, still with using the grant funding. We had a weekend workshop that was primarily on site. We did a day working on a 2D collaborative project. The next morning we went on a boat trip, an offshore boat trip,
That was wonderful.
to just take a new perspective that for most people is quite rare, from the ocean back towards White Bluff. We also were made aware of the connections, the offshore connections to Split Solitary Island and beyond. On board, contributions from our marine biologist, our two ecologists with a lot of geological and information-packed, exciting morning.
In conjunction with Science Week, we held our first public programs event at the Yarrawarra Cultural Centre up near Red Rock. Was an ornithologist, a poet, and our Indigenous artist. And there were a few team members actually that attended.
I think it was probably not that long after that the bushfires began.
Yeah, they did.
And so we lost one of our ecologists who was up in the mountains trying to save some of the ancient rainforest.
The beech forests.
And various other people were away fighting fires or protecting properties. After that, the threat of COVID started to appear. And so by that time, teams had started working and experimenting together and actually doing some initial creating. And we had to get particularly creative to keep that rolling, because it was, communication by remote methods. An interesting time, but we dealt with it and we got through it. Following that, or around that same time, the gallery approached us to actually postpone our final exhibition
to the March of 2021.
Because that was the year of the 20th anniversary of the gallery, and we were to be the flagship celebratory exhibition at that time. That's when we became a 3-year project. And of course, that March of 2021, we had the works delivered, the show about to go ahead.
On the Monday?
On the Monday, we were notified that the gallery had had internal flooding, and the gallery was closed to further notice, and the show was going to have to be postponed. So that was a major blow and a real panic, because we'd geared up. We had a social media promotional campaign that had been going for some time. We were getting traction with local and regional media. Sarah and I had done an interview on regional ABC radio, and we had had articles in local magazines. And we had to regroup.
We did.
The postponement ended up being till the following October, the 30th of October. It was a 7-month lag. So we applied for a fourth funding grant.
We did.
To help us cover some of our costs for promotion and ongoing marketing.
Just to keep the momentum, because I think that was what was most disappointing for so many of us, was the losing momentum with a project that was already of that duration.
And we were concerned, of course, with losing momentum with the team members.
Yeah.
So we did schedule a few, even though COVID was around, when we were allowed to do any kind of particular socialising, we actually had a few informal gatherings just so that people could stay connected and be informed and know what was going on. I think probably if we were to look at what we feel were our major successes, and I think there were many despite the difficulties along the way, was that we managed to keep the team together, and we managed to form the organic relationships going forward. And we started off with 19 in the team. We finished with 17. We're really happy of the achievement of finishing with that number of people after a project that ran for 4 years, beyond expectations for sure. We had the exhibition installed, and we opened on October 30, and we opened with an opening, but it was COVID restricted attendance, but it was still a great triumph and incredibly well received, and we had once again major interest from local media. So we had print media, we had radio, and we had 2 local television channels featured it on their news programs. So it was a big splash, and then the attendance at that show was a record attendance, only surpassed by the number of people who come to the Archibald Prize exhibitions, which of course are very popular in the town. But we had planned a number of public programs, but with COVID restrictions we ended up having 2. A public panel forum with most of the team members in attendance, and
then White Bluff at night, which was actually delightful. The audience walked around and viewed the exhibition with torches, whilst our ecologist and our filmmakers projected and spoke about the sounds, the local sounds of the nature in the forests. And I think a major success also was our working relationship, having 2 coordinators.
I couldn't have survived if I'd endeavoured to do a project with that number of people and with that many moving parts without you on board. I probably would have ran away screaming at some point. So I think that was really useful. Yeah. I mean, in an ideal world, you would get a major grant, which while we got through approval processes for an OSCO grant, we didn't achieve success with it. So being able to have a project to afford a project coordinator that wasn't a contributing artist to the team would be ideal. If I was to do a project like this again, the council arts and cultural grants were essential because each year we received $5,000 or $7,000 depending on what was on offer, and that kept us afloat. But I would spend more time going around to local philanthropic arts benefactors rather than going through all of the grants processes, because I think the time would be better spent, and with a local collaborative like such as it was, I think we perhaps would have got better financial support.
I know to date, I was just told by one of the curators at the gallery that the 3D walkthrough is getting the most hits of the 3D tours.
That's marvellous.
Which is great. A year down the track, it's
Yes.
nice to know that it's still proving very, very popular.